Welcome to Side Hustle Paradise. I'm your host, Marc, the podcasting coach, bringing you expert sessions from top side hustlers and business owners where we teach you how to boost your income and do the work that you love. And on this path to building up side hustles, building up your business, and juggling that path for some people between leaving your job and having your business, and all these transitions, all this work we're doing, digital well-being is one of those things that often gets put in the back burner. So we're going to talk about how do we continue to care about our health and well-being during this digital era, during this time where we could be working 24/7. So we'll be talking about that with our expert, who is a behavioral scientist, dedicated advocate for digital well-being and ethics, and host of the Evolving Digital Self podcast. Our expert who joins us for this session is none other than Dr. Heidi Forbes Oste. Heidi, welcome to the summit.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on Side Hustle Paradise. And this is such an important topic because people, you hear hustle, you hear grind, but you do want to make sure that you are doing that in a sustainable way, not just revenue, profit, things like that, but also for your health, because you do hear about people who work so hard that, stuff happens. So I'm wondering if you could share with us how you first got into digital well-being and how you've really become an advocate in that space.
Well, I came into it in a bit of a circuitous way. I've been working in technology and social strategy for 25 plus years, I guess is the easiest way to say it. But when I was doing my doctoral dissertation, really trying to understand the benefits of social strategy and leaders getting involved in the social technologies that are being used by their organizations, I actually came down with Lyme disease. And I found that I ended up having to use a lot of technologies to support my ability to thrive. But in that process, I found that using the right tools, I not only learned how to thrive and survive in that situation, but I ended up finishing my dissertation in 3.5 years, and the rest of my colleagues finished in 5. So I found that actually applying a lot of the tools and the research that I was doing really helped me be more productive and more effective, and also take care of my health at the same time. And so really became me, sort of led me to being much more passionate about understanding the potential, but also the cautionary notes of the things to be wary of, and to help designers who are developing new technologies integrate those thoughts and those processes into their development.
And it's interesting how, really being conscious in these areas can help you have that boost in productivity. And I feel like people don't think about their digital well-being, their health, and all those parts of their life because they think that could take a toll on their productivity. It costs more to, be healthy. So I'm wondering if you can share with us, how did you manage to, with all the information we have, be able to narrow down and say, this is going to be the plan that I take?
Well, I think, some of the things that were absolutely the most critical and the first steps were really to understand how to manage my time better. And really recognizing when I was being productive and when I was not being productive, when you're in sort of that spinning cycle, and then using those times as times for rest, times for doing the things that don't require a lot of brain power. Also, just really being much more aware of what's going on with my body, and using wearables actually to track some of that stuff that's happening passively in the background that you don't necessarily notice, things like your heart rate, and various other things, but predominantly your heart rate and the amount of movement that you make makes a really big difference. So I found that some of it was passively tracking, but some of it I had to actively and proactively identify tools that would help me really track things that I wasn't able to do on my own.
And that's a really great point because Heidi's mentioning heart rate and things like that you don't really think about, but being able to look at those types of stats, I feel like you could really quantify so many different things to figure out, how do I achieve better results, whether in business or just in your health. And I do feel like we are in this digital culture where we will just work and not really prioritize sleep, not prioritize ourselves. So how can we get better at prioritizing ourselves and not just our work?
Well, I think, the first thing to do is actually just build an awareness. And so a lot of that is sort of, recognizing when you're being productive and when you're not, and testing the different times. So you can sort of see where your best cycles are. And you can do that in sort of an experimental way where you just track over the course of a week and really try to identify some key things that you need to get done and see how fast you can do them in the morning versus the afternoon. Find out if some people think they're a morning person, but actually they may be more productive in the afternoon. You may also want to check what you're consuming for lunch, for example, and whether that has a big impact on your productivity in the afternoon. Sometimes by doing slight tweaks just around your diet can make a really big difference in your productivity. So you may be actually an afternoon productivity person, you're just eating the wrong stuff.
Mm.
So initially, it's really sort of journaling is sort of a really important key in the beginning, and just recognizing I started two different things. One was journaling to sort of see where my productive moments were. And the other thing was a gratitude practice, just acknowledging them and, sort of holding them and saying, okay, this is good. This has worked well for me. And I appreciate that. And letting go of the technologies and the things that don't, because sometimes we get stuck in like, well, this is what I've always used. And so I'm just going to hold on to it because it's too much work to try something else. But sometimes we need to just let those things go. So, and sometimes that's a question of, digital transformation, switching to a new technology. Sometimes it's a question of actually taking on a technology you've just never used before. And you think sort of the learning curve will be too high, but actually the benefits on the other end tend to be worth it if it's the right technology. But that said, sorry, before I go into that, but with that said, sometimes it's better to stick with a technology that you know really well and works for you than it is to upgrade and do the latest and the greatest thing that may have too many bells and whistles, but not really the ones that you need. So it's really about tracking your productivity and where you are most effective.
And that's a really great point. Just thinking with the technology that works, sometimes upgrading makes sense. But when you upgrade, there's a learning curve. You risk ruining like your foundational habits. I know a YouTuber who uh, he got Photoshop, but he had been using some other platform for, software for a while. Dale Roberts, actually, he's one of the speakers at Side Hustle Paradise that talks about it there. But he got Photoshop only recently, and he's never used it, even though it has more features, just because he's more comfortable with the technology he has. So you could apply this to your health. You could apply this to all these different areas. I do want to expand on, you mentioned how, sometimes you think you're a morning person, but you're really an afternoon person. How do we figure out the peak hours for us to be productive and optimize our time around those hours?
Well, so one of the easiest ways to do that, I think, is sort of pick a sort of an intellectually taxing thing that you do every day. So something that's not just busy work that you can do when you're tired and your brain's not functioning 100%. So maybe it's writing copy, maybe it's whatever it is that's taxing for you, spreadsheets, whatever it is. Everybody's got their personal thing that they sort of struggle with that takes a little more brain power. Identify a couple different things that are very similar so that you can compare and do them at different times of the day over the course of a week, and just see what your results are. See how long time it to see how long it takes you. And there's all kinds of great timers that you can use that whether it's using it through an app on your phone, they also have ones that are desktop based, but time it and just see like how much am I getting done and what's the quality of what I'm getting done in an hour. Now, there's lots of different theories on the best approach, and some people aspire to the 20 minutes at a time, taking a break 20 minutes at a time. There's others that say, like, if you're on a roll, don't stop, just get it done. I mean, that's the way I did my book. That's pretty much the way I did most of my dissertation. I work really well in batching. So if I get on a roll, it's really hard for me to get back onto it if I take a break. That said, if it's something like copy and little things like that I can do, and breaking things down into smaller sizes, then 20 minutes is great. So maybe if you're good at that 20-minute routine, just give yourself a bunch of different tasks that normally take you 20 minutes and try them at different points in the day and see what your end results are and compare them.
And it's interesting how you want to test all these different activities that you do to see which ones are able to do most effectively at certain times of the day. And through all that experimentation, you can figure out what is going to be your most productive time of day. And that's part of being able to achieve well-being, because I feel like one of the reasons people aren't in that well-being vibe is because they feel stressed about their work. And you feel stressed about your work if you're not feeling like you're productive. People who get stressed out about their work and like usually are busy. Like they feel like they're moving the ball forward, but they're not. So how do you suggest we figure out the difference between something that's busy versus something that's productive?
Well, I love the way you say the word busy, because it is kind of an evil word, that whole like, I'm busy, and it makes you feel like you sound important because you're busy. You don't have time for things. But busy really just means that you're not managing your time well. So, so really, again, one of the things that I think it's important to think about is what you're putting into your body, and also the movement that you're getting. So it's not just about what you're physically producing, but also what's deriving those energy levels and your brain power. So some of it is making sure that you have some consistent routine, and whether it's meditation, whether it's movement, and what kind of foods you're putting into your body, and particularly when you're tracking things like caffeine and sugar. So you want to have those consistent when you're measuring your productivity times, because if those things are inconsistent, they're going to actually impact your productivity times. So it's really important to, for example, if you're one of these people that does intermittent fasting, so do the same thing every day. So don't do, okay, well, this morning I had breakfast, but this day I don't have breakfast. And because that's going to have a huge impact on how your body functions, how your brain functions, and just your agility, even with a keyboard. So I think it's important, put your scientist and your critical thinking hat on when you're doing this, and make sure you're recognizing what all of the different variables are that can impact your results, because otherwise you're not going to have real results, and you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm actually really a morning person, when you're not. It just happened to be that you had 3 cups of coffee that morning and you were all jittery and you were like hyper productive. The quality may not be great, but you got a lot done. That doesn't mean you're going to be like that every day. In fact, that probably will lead you to burnout. Same thing if, you had a really carb heavy lunch, and then you come back and you crash. The afternoon is just wasted. Well, that's going to really impact, obviously, your ability to work. But if you're eating really healthy, good things, and you go out for a walk at lunch, but you go, and then you go back to the office and you do your work, you're going to have a completely different result.
Mhm.
So make sure that all of the variables are consistent, so you can have sort of a controlled environment in your study of yourself. That's really important.
And I mean, there are so many different variables. Heidi mentions it very nicely. And when you are able to get into routines, like I know I'm most productive. I wake up early, I get a quick run in, I shower, I eat something quick, and then I work. I know that works for me. And that may not work for you. Like, don't do that just because I said that works for me. Maybe you could try it one day if you really want to. But the idea is that once you figure out what works for you, I mean, you just want to repeat the same productive day over and over again instead of experimenting. Like, experimenting is good, but you don't want to unnecessarily experiment either.
Well, and I mean, you can experiment on the weekends or on the days that don't have as big of an impact. So, for example, I have a very heavily laden schedule Monday through Thursday, and I plan for Fridays as days where I can play around with it. So those are the days that maybe I'll do walk and talks with people, or it's sort of a backup if I can't get an appointment with someone on any other day. I'll take a Friday, but for the most part, I really try to keep my Fridays free, so that I can do things like play around with a little bit, and try to see what's going on with my body, with my mind, maybe go get a workout, go, get out into the sun, listen to a bunch of podcasts while I'm on a hike, whatever it is. But it's about getting that routine and finding a day that you can play, and play with, with what works for you. See if there's new things that might work better for you. And if you've got something that really works, stick with it.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we sort of get into a routine, and then somebody else says, oh, well, you really need to try this. You're doing it wrong. And then that sort of, puts a monkey wrench into it. And, you get into a bit of a spiral thinking, well, why isn't this working for me? It's like, well, you know what? The anomaly is the norm. Nobody has the exact same routine that works exactly the same with their body or their mind. So you have to do what works for you.
I love that advice. All the stuff from this session you can take, you can try, you can use this inspiration when you're doing your own ideas. But at the end of the day, it's figuring out you as the individual, what works best for you to maintain your well-being, to be able to maintain the side hustles, grow them, be productive instead of busy, and get the results you want to see. I feel like this has been a session jam-packed with a lot of value for people who want to keep up with you. Heidi, where do we go?
Best way to find me is to follow my podcast, Evolving Digital Self. We've got great conversations about the human relationship with technology and how it's changing the way we work and live. So come on over there, or you can, if you're interested in my research, you can also go to tobalanceyou.com. That's the number 2 and then balance the letter u.com. There's all kinds of research there to help support it.
We will have those links down below for everyone who wants to follow Heidi and listen to her podcast. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on Side Hustle Paradise. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you so much, Marc. Appreciate what you're doing, and it was great joining you. Thanks.